Hi, Kings fans. Welcome back to the Frozen Crown and another weekly review. This week we'll be taking a look at week number 10, a week in which I entitled Up from the Ashes, as Phineas Copley's career as well as the Los Angeles Kings season seems to have come up from the ashes. We'll take a look, as always, at the 3 games of the week. We'll look at the key performers and those in the doghouse. We'll have a summary and then take a look toward the very key week 11 and even into December and January's coming into next month, as we'll have a pretty big month for the Kings in January. So let's go ahead and get started by looking at, unfortunately, what may have been the worst loss of the season this year against the Buffalo Sabres. So the Kings lost 6-0, though if you guys remember, they did go into the third tied. They went into the third tied 0-0. I think that the Kings broadcasting crew and even, just Kings fans maybe in general will look at the shots on goal and be happy with that and say, well, they got all kinds of shots. I think they even had 40 shots in this game. They had a lot. But to me, I couldn't care less. If they're not quality and they're not really, generating consistent scoring chances offensively, it doesn't matter to me. All it does is pad the other goaltender stats, in my opinion. So I thought Anderson played a solid game, but nothing crazy. The Kings just didn't generate enough good scoring chances. So, you can look at the stat line and see that we had a lot of shots this game. It doesn't mean anything to me. We could have a 20-shot game where half of them are good chances, and that's more important to me than having a 40-shot game when maybe 2 or 3 are good chances. So I thought the only really thing that you could really salvage out of this game is that I thought Phoenix Copley still played pretty well. Obviously, he got lit up, but a lot of these goals were not his fault. And I think that for the most part, he still proved that he should get the start, especially the way that Quick had been playing. He should get the start. And if you remember towards the preview of this season or of this week, I did say that I wanted to see Copley get 2 out of the 3 starts this game. He ended up getting all 3, which we'll get into later, but definitely still played well enough, I think, to deserve the start against Boston, which he did get. Now, as far as the panic time, I think that some of the Kings fans, I even got a comment on the last video, some of the Kings fans may have been ready to press the panic button. And I think that really is only made worse by how frustrating it can be to watch these games. It's not entertaining to watch your team lose and get shut out. And also some of like the passing being really inconsistent and getting passes just not tape and things looking really clunky this late into the season can be very frustrating and make it maybe easier for you to say, let's press the panic button. But for reasons I'll get into later in the video, I don't think it's panic time. I still think that there's something to be salvaged from this season, and certainly the Boston game helps that point along. But we'll get into that next. So he gets the start here. Copley again gets the start, and he is, after this game being the best Los Angeles Kings goaltending performance we've seen this season, he's definitely our new starter. So, Peterson, I'm not sure how long you were planning on being down there in the AHL, dude, but you're going to be there for a little bit longer because I think that Copley is our new starter, at least for the foreseeable future. He is playing lights out, I think, right now. Obviously, that Buffalo game is a bit of an outlier, but he's playing lights out, and certainly the biggest reason we won this game. I think we also had a much-needed game out of Kempe and our penalty kill as well. So Boston's a good power play team. I know we had like one really good save by Copley on a power play opportunity by the Bruins, but for the most part, I did think that the penalty kill did do a good job shutting down good opportunities and good shots against. And then Kempe got 2 goals in this game and helped to get us into overtime. So certainly a good performance out of him, who had been struggling lately. One thing that does worry me is how late the Kings can seem to kind of wake up and snap out of it and start to try to get back into a game. So the referees kind of helped us out as far as penalties go, getting us a 5-on-3 in the third period to help us with this third period surge. But it feels like we see it too often where, we saw it against Columbus, we saw it against Seattle, where the Kings are down and then they try to rally. And those are fun, I guess, to watch, and they're exciting, but at the same time, it's not a consistent recipe for success for the team. So we can't just be relying on this third period surge because, Father Time is always going to win in the end against the clock. If we're fighting the clock so much every single season, every single game, we're eventually going to start losing these games. So, it's good to see and it's fun, but at the same time, we'd rather just be winning the game, going into the third as opposed to trying to push and fight back. So, to me, this kind of just shows an inconsistency in effort for the Kings here. The first and second periods are how you build into having the lead into the third. So if we go into the third down and we just really start to kick it up, that means that we really had the energy to do it before and we just didn't really want to. So there's a little bit of effort and motivation factor there for me. But still, when we're playing the number one team in the league and we are able to come back and get a win, that's good. And especially good for the confidence boost. So I highlighted here the confidence boosting side from a goaltending perspective for Copley, because he did stop Patrice Bergeron, Taylor Hall, David Pastrnak, and Brad Marchand, all of which are, you could probably say, superstars in the league. He stopped all of them in the shootout to help the Kings get the win. But from a confidence boost perspective on the forward end, you had Velarde score right off the rip in this shootout. You also had Kempe score in this shootout. And then you even had Trevor Moore score in this shootout too. So guys who had probably been having a little bit of a down week as far as offensive numbers and things, really stepped up and still contributed in a scoring perspective. And I think you can definitely say that this game would help guys especially like Velarde, who really needed to get something positive going for him. He had a good shootout goal here, so a good confidence boost, and it kind of just maybe gives the coaching staff and other team members a breather and saying, okay, we lost to Boston, we lost to Buffalo really bad. Now we won Boston, so those two kind of even each other out, and we're kind of back to square one. So still a much needed win. Very, very good to see this, as it seems like things are staying on the rails for the Kings this season. Now for the last game, another shootout win, but we beat San Jose in this last game, and I think that it was interesting to me to see the game plan change from one game to the next. So I didn't really see, any one strategy being used by the Kings here against Boston. But it definitely against San Jose, I think that you can commend Todd McClellan and the coaching staff for giving an emphasis more on rebounds here, as I think that Reimer is probably one of the worst goalies we've seen, at least one of the worst goalies I've seen watching hockey this year. So his goal against Deneau that he let in was not a good backhander. He also had a rebound that came right back out to Jarrett Anderson-Dolan that they scored on. So it was just interesting to see that the coaching staff was kind of making plans on a game-to-game basis based on who we're playing against. It's kind of one of the first times I've seen that this year. So I think that it's good to see the coaching staff still continuing to do their thing, even when the team's maybe struggling. And I also saw an emphasis on puck battles, specifically with getting body positioning before you embracing body contact before you really make a play with the puck. Mostly, you could say this is probably best exemplified in Kupari's forecheck when he came in and forechecked for the goal that Jarrett Anderson-Dolan ended up scoring. So he really embraced the body check first and then went to play the puck second. And we could see, I think that Kevin Fiala is a great example of this. He does this all the time, but other forwards seem to have gotten the message from the coaching staff that was what they wanted to see out of them. So promising to see that. I think that the Kings do need to add a little bit of physicality to their game, and so that might be a one step towards that improvement. The lines were in a complete blender for this game, not only on the offensive side, but even on the defensive side too. But we did see the line of Jarrett Anderson-Dolan, Velarde, and Kupari together. All these guys are young and have some flashes of skill here. So I do see some promise out of Kupari. I'd like him at that third center spot, at least maybe until Byfield gets called back up. But he looked pretty decent with Velarde and Jarrett Anderson-Dolan. So a little bit of fire under that line. It seemed like they had a little bit of motivation and certainly ended up getting a goal that helped the team win here. So they look pretty good. I'd be happy to see them go ahead and try this as a third line for the next week too. One big piece that came out, he was in our doghouse last week. We did see Grundstrom come out for this game, which I was happy to see. I think other guys like Kupari could get a chance in here, as Grundstrom's shown me nothing lately. And we also saw the first game of the year for Jordan Spence, who looks like he belongs in the NHL. And I'm not really sure what the Kings are going to do from a right-handed puck-moving defenseman standpoint. They are loaded. with, Doughty and Dursey and Walker and Spence. There's just too many pieces at that position. So unfortunately, we probably will lose someone like that in a trade at some point, but we do have to kind of diversify our defense, I think. But to be still blending lines at this stage of the season is worrisome. Especially seeing that second line get broken up because Arvidsson did come back. I think he had the birth of his daughter this past week and was out for the first two games. But he came back in, and I would think that he would slot right in along Danault and Moore, but he ends up playing on a separate line, and Iafallo played with Danault and Moore. So even to see that line get mixed up, obviously first line's been in and out, rotating door for a while. Third and fourth line's really the same, but that second line stayed consistent, and even Todd McClellan has switched this up this week. It's not really comforting for me as a fan to sit here and see all these line changes this late in the season. We're almost halfway, and I'd like to see a little more consistency out of the lines here shortly. But Copley and Trevor Moore get us another shootout victory. And we keep the Kings rolling and keep the points coming in. So overall, still a pretty good week. So we'll summarize it next. Again, we have a new starting goalie, Phoenix Copley. For sure, going to be getting the starts, the majority over Jonathan Quick, barring injury here for the near future, anyways. But it's just something we want to take one day at a time here. Okay, it's not something we need to panic or need to celebrate about. We still seem to wake up when we need to. When we need to get back into the game, we can score the goals to get back into the game. When we need to beat a team that we should be beating, for the most part, we do a good job of that. I don't think we leave a whole lot of points on the table for the Kings right now, but I do think that it's going to be something that we need to see changed here shortly, as I'll get into the preview of January for sure. We need to start beating teams earlier and playing better earlier in the games. So one thing I do want to touch on here is the schedule. So Kings have played like the most games in the NHL so far right now. The Kings have like number one in games played. So certainly when you look at the standings, they're probably a little bit higher, a little inflated in the standings than they should be. They're in second place now, maybe deserve to be in third. But one thing that this has kind of shown me is that I think that the Kings were in a situation where they really needed a little bit of extra time to get some of these new guys into a position where they can find their own spot here on the team. And they really haven't had much time from a practice standpoint and from a strategizing standpoint as coaching staff and as players. They've been kind of they've had a lot of road trips, they've had a lot of back-to-back games, they've had very few times to really sit back and diagnose and maybe sit and get back in the weight room and get back in the video room and things. So their schedule has been kind of hectic, and it'll probably start to slow down here. Of course, for the Christmas break, we'll see a couple of weeks here back-to-back where we have only 3 games in the week. And hopefully we can start to see some consistency here and maybe get some rest for some guys that need it. Because we do have a heck of a January and late December month coming up. But I think that all these changes to the lines, especially similar to the ones we just saw in San Jose, we need to see those stop soon. As I mentioned, we're getting towards halfway through the season, and we don't know who our top 6 is. We don't know who our third line center is. We don't know who we've got on defense. We've seen Brant Clark come in and out. We've seen Tobias Bjornfot come in and out. We've now just seen Spence. We don't know if Sean Dursey's a left side D or a right side D. There's a lot of things still yet to be set, and we need to be able to get kind of rolling and get into a rhythm, and we can't do that if we're going to be sitting here swapping guys in and out every single game. So really need to see the changes stop soon for me and kind of get our team clicking. On to the key performers. Maybe not so much because of his play, although he certainly had a great game in the Boston game, but probably more so just because of the fact that he's giving us consistent, steady goaltending. I have to give it to Copley again. So I think he's played 5 games and gotten 4 wins now. Very good numbers from a save percentage and goals against average standpoint. Obviously, this week with that Buffalo game, it's not going to look that great. But trust me, his numbers would be glistening without that 5th Buffalo game. So I think that he is still deserving of recognition here for bringing the Kings kind of back on track. And unfortunately, we've got $11 million tied up in 2 goalies who can't get us these kind of numbers. So We'll see how much longer we keep having Phoenix Copley in, but I'm happy to ride him until the wheels fall off. Next is Kempe. I think he may have been in the doghouse, if not last week, maybe the week before, but he really was struggling. He got back on the first line here for one of these games, and he had 2 goals against Boston. Really, still a power play threat from a one-time perspective on that right-hand side. So he gets 10 shots too, and I think that for some players they can only have 1 or 2 shots in a game and still be effective. But for a guy like Kempe and his play style, he needs to get a lot of shots on goal. So to see him average more than 3 in a game is about what you'd like to see him be, is above 3 in a game. So good to see him get back on track. A big part of why we won against Boston, and then a big part of why we won against both Boston and San Jose at least in the shootout, was Trevor Moore. So 2 game-winning goals in the shootout. Not particularly impressive numbers from a regular season or from a regulation standpoint, but getting the 2 game-winning goals in the shootout. He also got a new contract this past week. To see that for him is good, and certainly the shootout goals are basically, if you win the shootout, it's kind of like a game-winning goal. So certainly good to see out of Trevor Moore, as his numbers otherwise without Arvidsson probably took a hit. Next, we're into the doghouse. 2 guys that have found their way in the doghouse before. Again, if you follow along this season, you can probably tell I'm not a huge fan of Drew Doughty so far. But I thought what stuck out to me was 7 giveaways. One game he had 5 in one game, but 7 giveaways, only 2 assists. I think both of those were secondary assists. 6 shots on goal, and then a penalty in the 3rd period against Boston when the game's tied. I think there's maybe 30 seconds left on the clock. He takes a pretty unnecessary boarding penalty. I think maybe against Brad Marchand, up against the boards, and just something, anymore now in the overtime, it's a miracle if you don't get scored on overtime 4-on-3 power play. We saw 2 of those this past week where the Kings penalty kill stood strong and really did well to kill off a 4-on-3. But as Doughty, being a veteran, up against the boards, the guy's showing you his numbers, and you cross-check him right into the boards. It's a reckless penalty that we don't need, especially given the fact that we were on our way to mounting a comeback against Boston. We just kind of dodged a bullet that we didn't get scored on that penalty kill, because that could have easily cost us the game and easily cost our confidence. So, he's getting some secondary assists. He had a couple times when he took the puck up ice, and it was kind of eyebrow raising to see him bring it up, and then he just gets rubbed out or fails to even get a shot on goal. And he's just not having the spark that he's had in the past as far as offense goes. So again, he lands himself in the doghouse, especially with the giveaways and the bad penalties. Those are the kind of things that we need him to clean up. So the other person here in the doghouse is Kaliev. He's getting a lot more minutes than he's used to now. I think he had an average of 15 plus minutes time on ice across all 3 games, and he only managed 7 shots across 3 games, and no points, no nothing. Even on that second power play where he's usually money for a goal or 2, got nothing. So, it's promising. Last week I thought he had a pretty good week. He got stepped up to the first line, and then this week he can't find it. So again, the Kings have been inconsistent this year from game to game, and certainly guys like Kaliev having consistency from game to game can help that out. But he's a guy we're looking for. We're looking for Velardis and Kalievs and Kuparis to step up and be every game top 6, potential, at least top 9 guys. And none of them have really shown it from a consistent week-to-week standpoint, except for Velarde maybe early in the season. So I'd like to see both of these guys who got first-line minutes this past week. They need to contribute more. Now, previewing Week 11. Week 11, I think, is a pretty soft week. All these teams are either out of a playoff spot or barely hanging on to one. Maybe Calgary's in one at this point. But, you got Anaheim and Arizona, 2 of the worst teams in the league, especially out west here. And then you got Calgary as well, a team that's struggling, definitely doing worse than you would think. So I, as a Kings fan, expect 3 wins here, and I think others should too. You should not look at these teams and have any reason to believe that a playoff team should lose to any of these teams. So we as Kings fans, we need to expect that they win all 3 of these games. I know there's a back-to-back Thursday and Friday, but the back-to-back is against Arizona. So, Arizona has been kind of sneaky good this year. I think they're better than people thought they would be. but we still need to beat them. We need to beat Calgary, and of course, being the freeway face-off, we got to beat Anaheim, right? So I expect 3 wins this coming week, and the Kings need to get on track very soon because I'll now do a December and January matchups summary. So this isn't every game from December and January, but take a look at some of these teams we're going to be playing in December at the end of the month here and in January. So to start things off, we got Vegas. We're playing them twice. Note that they're first in their division. We're playing Colorado, recent Cup winner. We're playing Dallas twice, also first in their division. We're playing Boston again, first in their division, best team in the league. We're playing Edmonton, a team that we're going to be scrapping for in the playoffs and could very easily see a playoff matchup with them. Obviously, McDavid, anytime you have a game against him and Draisaitl, you're going to have a tough matchup. Then we play against New Jersey, who's the first number 1 team in their division. And then Tampa Bay Lightning, another recent Cup winner. So this is most of these are in January, but even in December, we see Vegas and Colorado and Dallas. So, I mean, looking ahead, we are lucky this week that we have 3 teams that are pretty bad to kind of rebound on and kind of get our game together on, some practice teams, if you will, because come December, January, it gets real. Look at these matchups. I mean, there's a few other teams in here. There's a couple times we play Philadelphia and stuff and some other teams that aren't that great, but there's a lot of really high-powered teams here. And we often have struggled to kind of step up to the plate against some of the big dogs. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing these matchups. These are going to be the ones that kind of show us, hey, are the Kings ready this year or not? So looking forward to seeing those. Those aren't, again, for another couple weeks, but certainly it'll be interesting to see how the Kings do against some of the weaker teams now to maybe build themselves up to get to the point where they're ready to get on a roll against some of these better teams. So looking forward to 3 should-be wins this coming week here for the Kings in Week 11. And look forward to following all along with the Kings and follow along with you guys throughout the season as we look into every week of Los Angeles Kings hockey all throughout the season. So thanks for following along. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below if you disagree or agree with anything I say. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.